I love seeing that little live message pop up to show that we are indeed streaming to Facebook. And in fact, this is a bit unusual for Runners High. We're a minute early, so we're just going to wait one moment and let everyone join the conversation before we officially get started. But welcome to everyone who has joined us already. All right, it reads 4 o'clock Pacific my time. That makes it 7 p.m. in the East. So good afternoon or good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining us from, and welcome back to Runners High, presented by Canada Running Series. Runners High is a collection of informal conversations with key and influential members of the world and the business of running. My name is Kate Van Buskirk, and I'm excited to be your host for today's discussion and Q&A with your Canada Running Series race directors. So as we mention each week, Runners High is interactive, and this week especially, we're encouraging all of you to leave your questions or your comments for our race directors in that comment section on the CRS Facebook page. We'll be tracking those throughout today's chat, and we will answer as many of them as we can along the way. And just before we fully get into today's discussion and Q&A, we do want to remind everyone that you can follow along as our Canadian elite athletes take on the Canada Running Series virtual races this spring. It's already turning into a very fun battle as previous champions, Canadian Olympians, and future stars of our sport contend for the top spots. There's some really good rivalries going at the moment following the spring runoff, which took place last weekend. And the next event in this virtual elite series is the 10K that will be part of the Banque Scotia 21 km coming up this weekend, May 1st and 2nd. And then the final event of the series will be the Scotiabank Vancouver Half Marathon on June 5th and 6th. So you can check us out on Twitter and Instagram for all of the exciting updates, cheer on your favorite runners, and again, pay attention to those rivalries because I think they'll be really fun over the coming weeks. So for today's discussion, we're turning the spotlight on ourselves, giving 3 of our amazing Canada Running Series race directors a chance to provide lots of information and updates on what they've been up to very hard at work over the last several months, and also on what you can look forward to in the weeks and months ahead. This is, as I said, also an opportunity for you, our wonderful community of dedicated runners, to interact with our race directors, asking questions about the current and the future state of road running in our fine country. So this evening we are joined by Charlotte Brookes, the National Event Director at Canada Running Series, Ryan Chilibeck, the CRS West Race Director, and Mr. Alan Brookes, President of Canada Running Series and Race Director of the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon. Good evening to you all.
Hi, Kate. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
So nice to see all your faces. So this conversation today, I think, is really an opportunity to do 3 things. We'll look back briefly and reflect on how Canada Running Series got its start, how it's evolved over the decades into the premier road running series in Canada, and really what the value system has been from the beginning. Next, we'll take stock of where we are today and how that value system continues to guide us in the face of COVID-19, and of course, its myriad challenges for both runners and race directors alike. And perhaps most excitingly, we'll also chat about where we go from here. So how this industry can move forward safely and effectively to continue delivering superior experiences to each of you, our wonderful community members. And we're going to start with that first point this evening. Alan, you have really been the face of Canada Running Series since its inception, but the story goes back even further than that, going back to your earliest days of race directing in the 1980s. And there are just thousands and thousands of runners across Canada participating in CRS events each year, but I'm not sure how many of them know the remarkable history of this organization. So Alan, maybe you can take us back to those early days for you and give us a better idea of how Canada Running Series came to be what it is today.
Sure. Thanks, Kate. And thanks to everybody who's joined us this evening. It really has been a challenging last 12, 13 months for us. And it's this kind of connectivity that makes a big difference. That was so important for us from the beginning. I actually started organizing my first races in 1983, 84. were you born then, Kate?
I just
Can I
missed that.
ask?
I'm an 87 baby.
Oh, uh, so my race directing career though really took off. I had been a history professor at the University of Guelph when I first started doing it as a hobby thing. But in '86, I decided to quit the teaching, make the big move into the big city, and began as the race director of the spring runoff in 1986, a big spring 10K, and I was co-race director of what was then the Toronto Wang Marathon. I'm pleased to say I've outlived Wang computers. But I guess, like you said, the key thing is the values. And we were runners ourselves. We've always been runners. And my marathon best, way back in those early days, was 2:34:40. And my 10K best is 33:48. And we wanted to put on top quality races for Canadians at home. When I started, people used to tell me, Kate, Alan, if you want a decent race, you've got to go to the States. And it used to drive me crazy. The big race then was the Eaton's Tay. It was a big race, 4,000 or 5,000 people in downtown Toronto, but everyone knew it was 9 point something 10K, so everyone had their PB there. And the first 400 people across the line out of 4,000 got a finishing time and a place, and everyone else, you just had to look at your watch, your Timex watch as you crossed the line. So from the beginning, we gave a promise of we want to organize races with a safe and accurate course and an accurate finishing time and place for everyone. And we always wanted to have a balance in our races between the sport element of having top international runners there. What became the Toronto Waterfront Marathon, the first 2 years, the women's winner, it was a half marathon then, was Joan Benoit Samuelson. So we had, top international talent coming in to really push and stretch our Canadian stars, help them develop their careers. But also, we've always had a charity from day one. And that was really our mission, to put on good races for fellow runners and to have this balance between sport and community. The YMCA Community Fund was our charity partner. At the beginning, our races had a few thousand people, and we used to advertise that we were runners in business, not business people into running. And it's been that sort of connection with the community and that sort of trust level. If you want a good accountant, go to so-and-so, he's a runner. And we built on that so that now, there's 70,000 runners a year, or at least there was in 2019, $6 million raised for over 300 charities. But it grew so slowly and organically. I think the key things, the honesty, the transparency, the mission of building community through running, having the balance between sport and community, all those values have really remained the same. And obviously during the last year or so, we've had to really pivot, to change how we delivered those values. But it's been with everybody's help. It's been a really remarkable time with us all in this together to keep the thing going.
Well, Alan, again, as someone who races quite a bit, both in Canada and internationally, and has competed in many CRS events myself, I can attest to what you were saying about, this concept that you have to go to the States to get a good race, and how through the work that you and Canada Running Series have done, That's absolutely not true anymore. So not only can we, even as elites, get really great racing opportunities, highly competitive experiences, I've also never had as much fun at a race as I have at a Canada Running Series event, between the music and whether, we've talked about this before, but the pancake breakfast in High Park, all of the different challenges that CRS puts on, that sense of inclusion and community is just paramount and very visible and felt throughout all of your events. So I know I'm in a different capacity now, but as a runner, I'll say thank you for that as well. And Alan, you talked about that value system, that transparency, the honesty, just being really authentic and true and open with your runners. And of course, that, as you mentioned, has become more important now than ever in a time when there is so much upheaval and so much uncertainty in the aspects of everyone's lives, and particularly in event registration and event coordination. And I think that's a good segue into our next conversation, which is some of the challenges, maybe some of the behind the scenes challenges that runners may not always be able to see, because when events are put on really well, you don't know how much went into putting them on. I think we've said a few times with various people on these calls that the harder people work, it usually means that the less people know how hard those folks work, because it just appears seamless. But of course, COVID has presented challenges for all of us, and race directors are not excluded. And Charlotte, we're going to speak with you a little bit about some of the specific challenges facing race directors during this time. But to open this conversation, just to provide a little levity, I'm going to read a poem that was written by Erin Rosa. And Erin is from the Return to In-Person Racing Committee that CRS formed internally in January. And this is a great riff on a Dr. Seuss poem. So this is called An Ode to the In-Person Race Committee. What do we do? What do we know? Where do we start? Where do we go? Government guidelines sure would be great, but for the time being, we'll just have to wait. And what about the volunteers? Should they start practicing silent cheers? Is there an outdoor gathering limit? And do our race plans fall within it? One form, two form, old form, new form. Let's not discuss until we're blue form. Let's move on to how runners depart. Do we have a time trial start? Sending off in twos, 10 seconds apart. And then let's talk about the course. 6 feet apart, we must enforce with our small but mighty masked task force. From there to here, from here to there, and all the signage everywhere. Don't bring a bag, you'll still walk away with contactless swag. There won't be a party, we're sorry to say. We do this with love so we can return one day. Some will be sad and some will be glad, but we think all of this is totally rad. We'll prepare to prepare and plan to plan. We'll put on a great race however we can. And when all is said and done, we know it'll be fun, whether a virtual experience or an in-person run, for 10,000 runners or 101. I think that's so fun. What a great poem by Erin. Oh, it's just fabulous. So Charlotte, I mean, I know it's sort of done in a somewhat joking, fun manner, but there are a lot of really important points in that poem. There are a lot of important points about how challenging things have been, and then also the creative ways that race directors in this industry across the country and around the world are looking to move forward and make sure that we can come out of this the best way we can. But let's start with that first half. Let's start with some of the major challenges that have been facing you all at Canada Running Series and really our industry at large.
Yeah, sure. I think everyone in general it's around the unknown, right? So, we were being lighthearted about that of like, will there be guidelines? Will there be this? Will it be 6 feet apart? But that's really a lot of it. And so we don't have that crystal ball. We don't know what things are going to look like in 4 months. So as planners, we control the controllables, right? So we've really embraced what we've been able to do to connect with our community, as Alan mentioned before, through virtual. We've gotten super creative in some of our virtual races with 5K Coffee Club that's coming up May 1st. We've had our TTC challenge last year. We had the Camp KM in January. We're actually going to launch a new event May 11th, a virtual event happening in June. Yep, little teaser there. Super pumped about that. We've been working on that one for months. It should be really, really exciting. So again, like as event planners, race directors, and with the mission of building community through running, we've been really challenged, I guess, or given an opportunity to rethink the way that we see our events and those traditional in-person races until the point where we can get back to in-person racing. But that point that Alan brought up before of us, being runners and being so committed to what we do, in those moments where we're at the finish line with tears in our eyes as the last person comes through, like those are the things we miss so much. And like everyone else listening in, like we can't wait for that moment, but it has to be safe in order for us to return. So that's the big chunk that we're unpacking of, what's possible and what can we do safely to get back to in-person racing.
And Charlotte, maybe you, or if Ryan wants to jump in a bit here, because I know you've both had so much experience with this, can provide a few more details or some more information about the kinds of things that are challenging in terms of coordination with multiple stakeholders, because there's so much. We kind of said on a call earlier, I think we used the number 800. There are 800 things to consider and to think about. And of course, with those 800 things come people in various corners of this industry that all have to really coordinate well for this thing to get pulled off every single time we put on a race or an event. Maybe you can get into some more of the specifics about what that looks like and provide just a little more information about why that's so challenging right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, the big one, 25,000 people, October, 200 charities, 3,000 volunteers, 500 event staff. It's very complex and there's a lot of pieces to that. So when we're sitting down here and trying to figure out how we get back to in-person racing with that event, there's things outside of those limitations, right, around safety that come up often and are a huge component of the decisions that we're making. So we have 100 medical volunteers, doctors, nurses that are burnt out, exhausted. What are they going to feel come October after 16 months of a pandemic? Who's going to be available there? Our barricade company, our toilet company, our industry has been hit so hard. Knowing where they're at and them losing staff and them being able to get back to where they were in January or February of 2020 before the pandemic hit is going to take time. When we look at the route, we take over 42 kilometers of real estate in Toronto. There's conversations we're having about businesses that have been hit so hard. So we work months and months in advance with those coffee shops and restaurants and local churches and all of those groups to make sure that our impact is lessened when we come through those areas on the Sunday. They come out and cheer, they do all these things, but now it's been, again, a year and a half of their businesses being so impacted by this pandemic. Is it responsible for us to close down those roads and further impact them more? So those are just some of the things, that we're looking at that is beyond maybe the more obvious. Things with police, the city of Toronto and the other municipalities that we have to work with, they've all been displaced. They're all working new jobs. Our event team in the city of Toronto, they're not all staying there without an event on the book for 16 months, right? They've been put into different roles and it's going to take a long time for that engine to get back and running. And so those are some of the things we have to consider for that piece as well.
One thing I'd just chip in, Charlotte and Kate, again, thanks to the massive support of our fellow runners and the Canadian running community supporting our virtual races, finding fun where we can. We have been able to keep our Canada Running Series team in BC, in Ontario, in Quebec, keep the full team together. And as you mentioned, we've got an in-person return to racing committee that's been working for months, studying everything on the planet. So we're ready to go. But I think a much different issue that Charlotte raises, many of our suppliers aren't in business or they're key people at like a coning and barricade company. Are no longer there. And, you remember when the New York City Marathon was canceled after the hurricane, Sandy, that it was reached a point where the marathon in good conscience could not take all those sources away from Staten Island and throughout New York City that were needed for the community. And so they couldn't put on the race. They didn't have that support element. So it really is a lot of moving parts, but Charlotte, Ryan, and the team are working on those things. Another piece is the finance. You know, in the poem, you know, can we have 101 or can we have 10,000? Well, if we can have 5,000 in the waterfront marathon, we're missing 20,000 runners at the let's say $100 an entry fee. So that's just a sort of chill $2 million that was used to pay all these suppliers to close the road, to put on the event. And what can we put on now if we don't have all that money? So there's the health piece, but there's the business piece too, just being able to afford it. And even though we're runners in business, we did have to get a little better at the business side of things to survive 4 decades. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I was
Alan.
just
That's great. Charlotte, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that and just say nothing's off the table, I guess. These are all the things that we know we have to consider. And so we have these conversations, and I've talked to a few people in different run crews, you know, that are itching to get back, and they're like, would you do a 5K? Would you do a 10K? Like, I'll do anything. I'll do laps of the lakeshore. And I'm like, we're having all of those conversations. And those are some of the things that are less impactful, right? We know Active TO was a success in the past, and it's launching this weekend again in the East End. So there's some things there, right, that we are absolutely considering so that we can get back to in-person racing when it's safe to do so.
Ryan, I'm sure many of the challenges are the same, you know, whether it's in Toronto or on the West and just across the country. This has obviously been an enormous challenge. But from your particular perspective, is there anything else there that you'd like to add about some of these more particular challenges and how you're working creatively to overcome them?
I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to talk there, but we're 20 minutes in and I'm just saying my first things.
I didn't forget about you. I
That's
promise.
okay. It's okay. I don't have much more to add there. I think they did a great job just explaining some of the challenges we were going through. And I think at the end of the day, you know, just knowing that we're people too, and Alan said we're runners. So, you know, just seeing our friends' races get canceled, and, you know, it has just an impact overall on our well-being, and just, you know, like we miss it. We miss being there. We miss running in races, and I'm just really looking forward to the road back here.
Well, and we're going to chat about that in just a moment. But I guess one of the other things that really struck me as, again, both a runner and someone who has a little bit more of an inside perspective on CRS is that, you know, one of the recurring themes in the road racing world and in the track world, you know, across all events, is that you all are also at the whim of whatever the municipalities decide you're able to do, right? So there are certain things that you probably want to do and want to put on, and maybe even feel that you can do safely. But if you're not getting the permitting, or if there are, you know, health restrictions and, you know, lockdowns and things like that in various parts of the country, that obviously is going to be a completely non-starting preventative, you know, measure that you kind of can't overcome either. And so I think it's important for our audience to be mindful that everyone's working within the framework of however the health authorities are directing things in the various provinces and cities across the country too.
Yeah, I guess that's a really good point, Kate. They're the ones that are going to give us the permits, that are going to let us have the event. So until we get those permits and those guidelines from public health and the municipalities that we run through, yeah, we won't be returning. So.
Charlotte and Ryan, can I just ask you guys a question?
Whoa!
Yeah.
Alan taking over.
He's going into the audience.
I just want to know, Ryan and Charlotte, no, it's a vital point, and it means the return to racing will be very uneven. You know, if you're in Florida, you can have a race with 6,000 finishers now. But Ryan, you've been talking to the city of Vancouver, and Charlotte, you've been talking to the city of Toronto. If you can find the people who haven't been reassigned to other jobs, can you give us a little bit of insight into where things are into two of our key cities there?
Sure. Yeah, I can start, definitely. We obviously have been trying to keep in contact with the local government here for the past 15 months, just to make sure that we're, just getting the best updates that we can throughout that process. It has taken until recently to talk to the City of Vancouver, which has been, great. They just had to make sure that they're in a great place to start talking to all the many event planners that put on events in this city. So we had a great call with them recently. I mean, it's not all positive news, but at least, the conversation and dialect is happening now. We have a few races that were happening this summer on the west. That always happens. So the Scotiabank Vancouver half marathon was in early summer. So the timelines on that were they were always a little bit gray when we were starting the planning process. So we just decided to go virtual right from the get-go. But the good news is that we planned into the virtual experience. So we didn't just have a bunch of stuff that we needed to get rid of this year. We actually could look at what we were offering and really go at it from the aspect that we wanted to create something that was fun and just a really nice virtual experience. So that's great. Scotiabank race will happen. And then the conversation for us now turned to the fall races, which is the Under Armour East Side 10K that typically happens in Gastown and the downtown east side of Vancouver. So, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. That's a neighborhood that's, it's difficult to plan a race in a normal year there. But right now that neighborhood's gone through some very, very tough times. So to lessen some of that impact, we're discussing alternatives that we might be able to have the race located, a smaller race or maybe an in-person, depending on how things go over the next few months, in a different area of either Vancouver or out into the Lower Mainland. So there is conversations happening. They're very positive right now. There's a lot of sharing between the municipalities, depending on, Vancouver is a very tough place to put on a race just because of the population density, but Langley or Chilliwack might be an option. They're within driving distance and they have trails and roads are a little bit, less used, and they still have the, all the infrastructure in place to put on an event. So, like I said before, it's positive, but it's going to look a little different this year for sure.
And Charlotte, just before we get to you, maybe Ryan, I know that, again, folks have just been as creative as possible and just desperately hungry for competitive outlets in any way they can. And I think you've actually been quite successful in your own running in terms of getting some PBs over the last couple of months. Maybe you can give us an update, because I always think it's fun to hear from your favorite race director about what they're doing in their own running.
Yeah, like Alan said, we're all runners, and that's how I actually got into this business. I just was a running junkie, and I loved participating in the CRS event. So I just became a race director with them, luckily, but I landed my dream job. But also on the side, we're faced with some boredom. I came out of January in good shape. We put on the Camp KM challenge and was stuck with a really good base there of cams throughout that month, and started to translate that into a little bit of speed work, and we were allowed to start gathering in groups of 10 out in Vancouver. So, I looked at my friends and really picked the 10 fastest ones I could find. No, that's what I based my friendship on. No, we got a really nice group of like-minded runners together, and we meet up every Sunday and we really push each other. And the conversation slowly turned to like, why don't we race, and let's see if we can push ourselves a bit here. And one of our friends was turning 40, and he had a goal to pick up every one of his PBs before his 40th birthday. So he had to do 4 in a row for 4 weekends. So we jumped in. There was some of us paced, some of us ran, some of us did different distances, but we picked some really fast courses and did up bibs for ourselves and just tried to make it like an actual race experience. And it was so much fun. Like I love racing, and that was like the best feeling I had in the past 16 months, just putting on the bib again and pushing ourselves and getting some PBs. So it was cool. Really
awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I started almost welling up there while you were talking about that. I'm sure there are a few other non-dry eyes watching this right now, thinking about their own outlets and our eventual return to racing. Charlotte, of course, I'm already checking some of the questions, and one of the most commonly asked one is, will there be a marathon in the streets of Toronto this October? And I know that's a difficult question to answer and a loaded one, but I know that you and the team have been working incredibly hard to be able to answer it. So maybe you can provide us an update there.
Yeah, I feel like I can give a good solid update. I feel like a lot of runners in the world are planners. They want to know what the calendar is. And I think, in December of last year, our marketing team did a really great job of laying out 2 calendars. We've got our virtual calendar, that's what we know. And here's all the dates you can plan into it. We got so much positive feedback from the community being like, thank you so much for telling me what I can count on. Here's our virtual calendar. And then we have our anticipated calendar, which was the Eastside 10K that Ryan mentioned, our zoo run, and then the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. So what I can share with those planners is we are going to go live with virtual only on May 18th for the Toronto Waterfront Marathon, with the hopes of being able to get more information and pull those plans together in the coming months after that. So should we be able to have an in-person race right now in our plans, we're working towards a mid-July date to have that and launched. So you can count on May 18th for virtual launching, and we're working on a front of the line access. So if you sign up for virtual May 18th and we're able to do an in-person, you'll get that 24 hours before we actually go live to the public to get to sign up for that in-person race, should we be able to do it. And that again is that July date there, the mid-July, that we're hoping we're going to be able to have that clarity. We need to get more vaccines, vaccines in arms, our numbers need to go down, a lot of things need to come together for this to happen. And we all know right now in Toronto, it's not a good place to be. So we'll just keep monitoring that, and we'll work towards that summer date.
And the race, if we can put on a real live race, in-person race, it will be that October 17th weekend, traditionally as planned.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
But we really, Kate, I think we really appreciate these opportunities for interaction and encourage all of our community to keep engaged with us on our Facebook page, on our Instagram. Like, we went through the finance thing. What if we can only have 1,000 runners and we're down 24,000 at $100 a piece? Are we better to put on an amazing quality 5 or 10K as opposed to a marathon? It costs us $500,000 just to close the road for the marathon, to put the barricades, the cones, the traffic control in place. And so, do we do an amazing 5 or 10K, or do we do a marathon that looks like it's up on bricks? We have our values, and we've always respected what the community has said to us. So we listen to you, and we'd be keen to know what the community does. I'm sure Charlotte will have some surveys over the summer before we get to that July date to have people help us make the choices. So it's a community decision that we move forward together.
Mm-hmm. Charlotte, earlier you said that nothing is off the table when it comes to these decisions and finding creative ways around all of the challenges. And this word that's become synonymous with the last year, which is pivot. We've all pivoted about 1 million times. I think we've all become basketball players during this time. But Alan, one of the things that, as much as we are exploring all options and you all are being very diligent about that and creative, you really said something the other day, Alan, that struck me about the challenge of just getting the permission to close down 42 kilometers of roadway, and how important it is to maintain that. If we are going to have a marathon, that it would be ideal to do that rather than perhaps just do multiple loops of a 5K course. Maybe you can explain a little more why that's so important and how long it took to build that relationship with the city of Toronto.
It could be a while, but the Coles Notes version, Kate, I think one of the successes of Canada Running Series, that our team has had the passion of runners and they've been sort of willing to fight for that longest yard. And I remember in the 1990s, there was a head of traffic in Toronto, and we used to call him Dr. No, whatever you wanted, no. And then we organized a big spring 10K that became the Sporting Life 10K and run down Yonge Street. And Dr. No would only give us one lane coned off, and then 3 lanes of live traffic. But the race grew so much that the cops would say, Alan, settle down, it's okay. We're gonna give you the whole road, and we're gonna tell Dr. No that we had to do that for safety concerns. So, you know, people will remember when we ran on the Leslie Street Spit for the marathon, and I remember my good friend Carlo Capalbo in Prague saying it took him 10 years to get the course he wanted for the Prague Marathon. And it's been like that for us. So do we want to put on a race that does loops on the Leslie Street Spit? And then some of our very good friends who have many other considerations in making a city of 5-6 million people work, but they might say, hey, that was great. Why don't you keep doing the marathon with loops on the Leslie Street Spit? We've come so far forward in 4 decades, we don't want to go back. And, you know, we got into the race organization thing to bring top quality running experiences, not up on bricks experiences. So, you know, it's great to have these sort of values that you've referred to that keep driving Ryan forward to new PBs, Charlotte, Erin to write poems. And we're not going to put on something that's crap for you this fall. We're going to do it right. And as Charlotte said, everybody's safety is going to be a top priority.
Thanks for that, Alan. That leads well into another audience question that we have. And, you know, you've sort of begun to answer this in terms of, again, being creative now, but also really maintaining the integrity of these events that you've worked hard over decades to really nail down and become experts at. But a question, and again, it's a big one, maybe for all 3 of you, is do you foresee racing ever being what it was before the pandemic? You know, that's a hard thing to envision now, but I guess, is our industry forever changed even once the pandemic goes away, should it do that?
Loaded.
No one wants to take this one.
I'm afraid to keep hugging the mic, you know, out of Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, go Ryan.
Well, I'll keep it short because you probably have a more formed answer to this one. But I mean, it's changing. Yeah, it'll change. Road racing has changed. Everything we look at now will always have that in the back of our mind of what might happen this year. Or, you know, what are we doing to plan for the big collapse of the race. So I think that's never going to go away as far as how we plan into races now. But you know, like we talked about the positives that come out of this time, and you know, we've been creative. We've got to you know, we got to just tear down all of what we had as our races, and we get to rebuild it. So I know when we bring like the Scotiabank Vancouver Half Marathon back, we might have the same great course, but I think it's going to look a lot different. I think there's going to be a great emphasis on the experience. Lululemon taught us that. We've learned from them over the last few years. It's been great working with them as partners, but you know, like maybe it's a sustainability thing. That's a very hot topic with us as well, and just making sure that every choice that we make when putting on a race is looked at it through that lens as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of positives that come out of this, but you know, the road back is going to look very, like, it's small steps, baby steps for us. We gotta take away what wasn't working and maybe what we kind of got into the rut of doing for years and years and years, and you know, listening to our participants and seeing what they actually want and what they didn't, and what's important to them.
Yeah.
Charlotte, one of the things that's been interesting as a recurring theme with a lot of the race directors and event organizers that I've been speaking with is that things have come out of this time during COVID that we never had a need for in the past. And one of the big things is virtual. And so virtual has been obviously the closest replacement we can have to in person, and lots of people are craving that in person experience. But another point that's been brought up a lot is that the virtual has allowed for greater connectivity and outreach, particularly, for instance, within perhaps more rural parts of our country, or international runners who want to become involved with Canada Running Series events, but for various reasons can't physically get here. I'm wondering what you foresee being the future of virtual and in person, and how that hybrid might live moving forward.
Yeah, I think, Ryan actually touched on a few things of it looking a little bit different, as well as us reflecting during this period and having to kind of put aside what was true to us maybe, or what we knew to be true, before the pandemic, and look at things a little bit differently. And so with virtual for us, January 2020, we had plans to actually bring virtual to SDWM in 2020. So we were sitting down with Running Room saying, how do we connect the country on October the 16th and bring, all the different running rooms from across the country and have these little virtual pop-ups and have people feel, the race day vibes who can't actually make it to race day. And so from there, with us having to go to virtual, what we've seen in this virtual space, which is so special, is what we've created an accessible and more inclusive space, I think, through virtual. There's a lot of barriers that maybe we weren't seeing before this came to play, and that we're looking at and considering. And we have, different age ranges now that are participating in virtual. When we had the Pause for a Polar Bear cause in February, a lot of our older population that were really like, runners or not runners back in the day are like, I love virtual because I can walk at my pace from my home whenever I want, and I can accomplish these big things kind of on my terms, versus a time limit out on the lakeshore. Like, I got to get it done in an hour and 40. Like, they can really enjoy the experience kind of under those conditions. And, we had this Marathon Juniors program that we've been doing for years at SDWM. And we went out to different areas of the city of Toronto and provided this 5K experience for a lot of kids, and a lot of kids in more high-risk areas in the city of Toronto. And so what we would do is we would, provide busing, get them from the school to the start line of the 5K. We provided training, they did their 5K, and we bused them back. And what we were hearing so much of was, the parents of the children are working night shifts. They can't get their kids to that 6:30 a.m. bus to get them to the race for 8 a.m. It's not safe for them to be waiting outside of the school, walking there alone in the dark at 6 in the morning. And so we weren't even able to help a lot of those communities in the in-person race. So in producing this Marathon Juniors program last fall virtually, again, the idea and the hope there was to expand and letting, a bunch of children from across the country participate where they are at their own time, not at 6 a.m., not having to be bussed in. So I think, again, virtual and this pandemic has given us an opportunity to really reflect on our industry and what we want it to look like when we get back.
I think it has expanded the community. Ryan's learned how better to ship things to Paraguay, for example. But yeah, the charity piece has, I said since the YMCA Community Fund in 1990 at the beginning of the series, that piece has always been important. And normally in Scotia Toronto Waterfront Marathon, about 20% of our runners are charity runners. But last autumn, it was close to 35%. And in real life, our 200 charities raise about $3.5 million. And so many races found maybe they'd raise 5 or 10% of the fundraising that they'd normally do. And our charities so massively stepped up. They raised $3 million in the virtual race, just like Charlotte said about the kids, that there was a flexibility of time. So absolutely, we'll be offering the two options of the virtual. And we feel when we come back that these programs like the charity runners, the community piece, the kids, they'll be bigger than they ever were before because of this combo of virtual and real life. And I should, Ryan, just mention our sponsors. Ryan's talked a couple of times about Scotia and that, but you know, there's a saying that partners help build events and sponsors pay for them. And we've been so fortunate at Canada Running Series to have amazing partners, and they've helped us. You know, when you look back at those early races and a few hundred, a few thousand people, and now it's 25,000 people, the likes of Ed Whitlock running his world records. The partners have stuck with us. They've stuck with us through the last year, whether it's Scotia, whether it's Running Room, whether it's Under Armour with the UA Spring Runoff or the Under Armour East Side 10K, Oasis with the Zoo Run. To a partner, they have stuck with us. So even though it's tough, it's been tough, I'd want to say to all of our community, again, that you've been amazing. And we feel we'll come through the other side stronger. We've learned all these extra skills like couriering to Paraguay, but putting on all these extra components. And maybe instead of 6 million, we'll be able to raise 10 million for the Canadian community when we get back. And instead of 70,000 runners, we can have 100,000 when we build in the virtual and the real life. So thank you and stick with us. It may be the coldest hour before the dawn now, but again, with everyone's input and support, it's going to be bigger and better than ever.
How can you not get excited after that? Alan, the eternal optimist, and for very good reason, because that optimism is backed up by hard work and constant creativity within your organization. You know, Charlotte, and so Alan, I really liked that. I liked that concept that partners help create something and then sponsors fund it, and that partnership is really that, you know, that valuable and enduring piece. And Charlotte, you spoke about some of the outreach to various communities across our country, using this virtual as an opportunity to do that, do some of, you know, the kids marathons and things like that. I know though that there has also been a great awareness around the increase for discussions about inclusivity and diversity within our running population in general, and then within organizations like CRS. And just last week, I know that Canada Running Series partnered with Black Runners of the GTA to use your platform to host a panel discussion about what diversity and inclusion can mean within our industry. I'm wondering if you'd like to speak a bit more to that, about some of the conversations that are being had, or even some concrete steps being taken towards some of those goals.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Yeah, that was great. Again, last Thursday was one step in many that, you know, CRS and our running community really needs to take, and again reflect on the events that we're having, the accessibility and inclusion in those experiences that we're providing. So with Melanie from the Black Runners of the GTA, she had this vision of having a panel and a discussion and being able to talk to the wider community of what running could look like. What does inclusivity mean? How do we feel safe? How do we get access to it? Who's coming to our running events? Alan talked again before about our mission of building community through running, and we had to pause and reflect on what that meant for us over the last year, and really take that apart. And are we being passive and complicit? Are we being active? Are we doing outreach? Who is part of our community? You know, looking at those 300 charity groups that we have participating in our events. Who do they represent, you know, in the broader community, and can we be doing better? And we absolutely can. And I think that's, again, our commitment for CRS as the leaders in this Canadian running industry, as we have a lot of work to do, and we have an opportunity to do a lot better of creating that space where it is more accessible. We're tearing down barriers to entry. We're partnering with new groups. We're giving over our platform to a more diverse group of voices. so they can have the important conversations, so we can learn, so we can grow. And so in that, you know, we've created an inclusion action plan. It's on our website. We would love the community to take a look at that, rip it apart, let us know what we're missing, let us know where we could be focusing some of our resources and energy, again, to create that space for everyone.
Thanks for that, Charlotte. And I'm sure we'll be making sure that we push those things out on social so that any of the links that we're referencing in this talk can be easily found through our social channels and the website. We have another question from the audience, and it's again a big one and a bit of an ambitious one. Ryan, you said that you sort of landed your dream job by becoming a race director. And given all of the things that you've all talked about with how challenging being a race director is, I think this question is quite apt. Just before I ask it, I do want to quickly mention that Charlotte, in her notes to me, said that Alan brought back a mug from the Houston Marathon that had someone on a bike while it was on fire on their radio while juggling cones, and said, "This is what it looks like to be an event director." So with that context in mind, our audience question is, how does one become a race director? Sounds like we have some ambitious folks out there who might want to actually take this on.
That's great. They can come mentor with me if they'd like, taking applications. I think we all came from different paths here. I know Charlotte obviously is born into this and born to do this. Alan has been working at it for decades. I'm definitely the new person to the team when it comes to the race director position, but I can't stress enough, like, first and foremost, we have a very strong team at Canada Running Series, and we all have our specialties where we excel, and we use everyone where they need to be used, and it all comes together beautifully. So like we said before, if you work really hard, then it seems like it's a very nice, easy process. And I think just through how we have the team set up, that it's a nice process when we're putting on races. It's fun. But yeah, for me, I obviously came about it sort of a unique way. I started as owning my own restaurant, so kind of a totally different avenue of work. And then through the restaurant, I became a runner just to kind of kick some bad habits and get into a better health space, mentally and physically. So yeah, it just clicked for me, and I had a lot of things I've learned through hotel and restaurant management and hospitality that is translatable to this industry, because at the end of the day, we're there for our participants, and listening to them and taking feedback and making changes is kind of what the restaurant industry is about as well, and the hospitality industry. So I looked at when they were hiring for this position of what we needed to do, and it was like, this is perfect. Like I think I even said in my interview way back in the day, I'm sure you don't remember, Charlotte, but I'm good at a bunch of little things, like a generalist in a bunch of areas, and I can really, bring a runner's perspective to this company. So like I can look at it from a road runner's perspective and say, that's going to work, that's not going to work. And I think that's where my experience sort of comes in handy with this big group. But I mean, like, there's more technical side of it. Like Charlotte and I are very different, and maybe she can kind of say how she came into this. I don't know.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. I can jump in. Obviously, born into it, diapers, all those fun things with Alan. I think you talked about a little bit, Ryan, like the interesting thing with the running industry is that passion. And so we do have a wide range of people on our team, and in what they're passionate about and their commitment. And so, Erin Rose, we talked about earlier in her poem, and she's so committed to charities and philanthropy and giving. And, she manages a lot of our charity programs and our volunteers. So does she have the passion of running and driving that? Maybe not the same way as Ryan, but she brings this other passion. So I think what we all share are the same values, and they show up in different ways. But yes, I kind of stumbled into this with diapers and whatnot, and started at Packet Pickup and putting safety pins together and handing out bibs when I was 5 years old, and Alan's Runner's Choice running store. And it kind of just progressed. And I did my undergrad in HR, which has proven to be helpful in a small business. Being able to have a dedicated HR person as well as an event director is very unique. So I was able to bring a lot of those skills, like Ryan said about his skills in hospitality, into what I do with our team. And then there's a lot of planning, a lot of preparedness. Yeah, it's really evolved, I guess, as we've mentioned before, from Alan starting in '84 to where we are now in 2021 with a command center of 45 people with cops and fire and Office of Emergency Management and the preparedness plan for the preparedness plan. So it's certainly evolved. We don't get to run our own races. That's one thing I just want to throw out there.
I think that's the biggest change too, Kate. You know, you asked me, I think, in one of our prep sessions, what was the biggest change I've seen in the 4 decades? And I think it's the professionalization of our organization. Yes, we're still runners, passionate about running, passionate about the community, but the events have grown exponentially in size. And to do that, like Charlotte's produced employee handbooks, we've got core values for the company, and she really is the queen of spreadsheets. To be a race director, it's interesting, and with Ryan's comments, the race organization is 2 key things. You have to be, or some of the people in the team have to be great people, great leaders who can pump, who can motivate, who can be on the bridge of the Titanic. And I know Charlotte is incredible at that. We won't get into stories about almost having to cancel the waterfront marathon 5 minutes before the start because we couldn't lock down the course secure for people to run on. But that people skill leadership, motivating and leading people, setting the tone, keeping everyone calm. And then the other thing is the massive planning for these enormously huge events that, you know, take year round to organize, and documents on SharePoint, tasks in Asana, Slack messages lighting up, and very often the people who are good at the organization, we have 1 or 2 jokes internally, oh, don't let so-and-so near any of the people, but we couldn't stay in business without their organization and you know, their skills with technology. So in some people, I think you can find both those things. And in others, maybe not so much. I'm not good at the organization like Charlotte. I like to jump up and down and get people excited and charge into the fray. But if you have one of those skills and not the other, again, Charlotte and Chris have built this amazing team, and now with Ryan the last few years. So you surround yourself with people who have the skills that you don't have. So you've got to be smart enough to recognize this. And just like building a soccer team or a hockey team, like Charlotte said, you need, you know, a goalie, you need a left winger, and we have this amazing team of 17 people now, and we try and work together again so that we can complement and make things happen, but 2 very different skill sets.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just so great that you've been able to maintain that team and keep that intact, especially, of course, during these challenging times. And I mean, it's so evident that collaboration and communication are just, you know, pivotal to all of this. And it sounds like that's true within your organization. But I know, as we just wrap up here, that you all have also been really borrowing, sharing, reaching out to, working with, gathering information from so many other players in this industry within Canada and beyond our borders. And of course, we've had many of those other race directors on Runners High, and we've highlighted their events as well. But I think that really speaks to the strength, especially of the Canadian race director community, that you all are so willing to not only explore those skill sets within your own organization, but share them more broadly so that we can keep the health of this industry going as long as we can through these challenging times. Yeah.
We're all committed to going and working whoever gets to have their race first. That is, we're all friends across the country and so excited for that day that somebody gets to do something cool again in person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're all looking forward to that so much. It looks as though we've reached the end of our audience questions for the moment, but maybe to wrap up, I'll just go around to each of you and ask if you can give us a final word, maybe in 20 seconds or 30 seconds, of either inspiration or hope that you have about what's to come, and then also how folks can get in touch with you, because I know that, of course, you can visit CanadaRunningSeries.com, you can find Canada Running Series on social media channels, but it's also really exciting when folks can connect individually with their favorite race directors. So maybe Charlotte, starting with you, a final word and how folks can reach you directly should they'd like to.
Yeah. Okay. How to reach me? Charlie Ann Brookes on Instagram. There you go. Alan's nickname for me as a child, Charlie. That's one. And one word. Yeah. Keep connecting with us. It's all about the community, and let's keep this community going in whatever way we can. So keep joining us through this journey, and we'll be there for you on the other side.
Alan, we'll go from the younger Brookes to the more senior of the two. How can folks get in touch with you, and what are your final words here?
Well, I'm ALN Brookes, Alun Brookes, Brookes with an E, on Twitter, on Instagram, Alan Brookes on Facebook, Alan at Canada Running Series. We're all Ryan at CanadaRunningSeries.com, Charlotte at CanadaRunningSeries.com. But talk to us. What we built over 4 decades, we've built together. And I think as a lot of the things that you and Ryan and Charlotte have said this evening, we have this amazing opportunity, almost like a tabula rasa, to rebuild our new Jerusalem when we come through the other side of this. And it's going to take all of our energy, all of our ideas, and that's how we got this far. So please connect with us, stick something on the Canada Running Series Facebook page. No question is a silly question. And yeah, come and volunteer with us, work with us, and then you can work up through the ranks when you figure out the system. We got this.
We got this. Thanks, Alan. Ryan, we neglected you for the first part of the conversation, so we'll give you the final word here about how folks can get in touch, and some final words of inspiration for us.
Sure. So Alan mentioned my email. It's Ryan at CanadaRunningSeries.com. Instagram, it's Ryan Meaty Sauce. Don't know why.
Is that a throwback to your restaurant days? As soon as you said you were, no?
It was from my last name. It's my last
Come
name.
on.
My last name is Chilibeck, so my nickname always growing up was Chili. And I think I was at a bar once, and my friend was like, "Meaty sauce," and then I just kind of stuck from there.
And you're a vegetarian, so that's
yeah,
good.
so it doesn't make much sense. Yeah. So, anyways, that's how you get in touch with me. Definitely send me a message, reach out if you want to. Like Alan, I connect with a lot of runners on a day-to-day basis via text message, via social media, emails. So, I'll just kind of reiterate his point. That's just like, keep this chatter going. You never know, like, if your idea can, leads to something bigger or better. And we're always looking for ideas that we can take and spark us with what we can do with this industry. So like I said, when we do come back, we want it to be meaningful for our participants. And the best way to make it meaningful is to, have your say in how we rebuild this.
Great. Well, Alan, Ryan, Charlotte, thank you all so much, not only for joining us today, but also for your enduring hard work to keep races happening, both in person and virtual. We look forward to being able to see you all in person again, hopefully very soon. But until then, it's been lovely to see your faces on this Zoom call, and I wish you all the best of luck and hope you stay safe and healthy.
Good luck with the training in flag.
Thank you. And just as we wrap up, we just do want to remind everyone that you can continue following along the Canadian elite athletes taking on the Canada Running Series virtual races this spring. The next event in this elite virtual series is the 10K as part of the Banque Scotia 21 km that is coming up this weekend, May 1st and 2nd. And you can tune back here to Runners High next Wednesday when we chat with the winners, the top 3 men and women from that virtual race as well. Until then, thank you all for joining us on Runners High. Stay safe and healthy. We will chat with you again soon.